So a few months ago, we've covered how the Arabic version of Wikipedia has pretty much been taken over, or the different kind of vision of the world it gave to people reading it than the sort of the English parts, especially when it comes to anything around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or pretty much anything having to do with Israel, with Jews, or with Middle East in general, and how much more pro-terrorist the Arabic version of Wikipedia was. Today we'll talk about the English parts of the Wikipedia and the fact that they are not doing, in some instances, that much better when it comes to straight up pro-Hamas content. The Anti-Defamation League has basically has done some research, has done a study about how relatively few, about I think 30 or at the very least 30, basically couple or a few dozens of Wikipedia editors have been on a crusade, or I should say jihad, to basically shift the way the English parts of the Wikipedia are talking about Israel, Palestine, Middle East, any type of Jewish content, any type of violence committed against Israel, and trying to show a much different picture. Joining me today are Marco, Richard, and Anders. I'll go to you, Anders, first. What do you make of the yeah, what do you just generally make of the ADL report that has just come out?
Well, I think it's one in a long list of reports. I mean, there are plenty of watchdogs out there who are keeping an eye on Wikipedia for good reasons. I mean, Wikipedia is, in many ways, it's an amazing source of information, you know. And over the years, I have used it a lot, and I still go to Wikipedia because, at least as a starting point, it's very, very helpful. You just have to be on your guard and, you know, use your critical thinking skills, just like when you consume anything online. And so in this case, I'm not surprised. Well, let me say this too, by the way, that Wikipedia has grown to become a real behemoth. I just counted up the languages that it exists in out there, and there are 73 different languages. And it's run by the Wikimedia Foundation, which is a not-for-profit. So you know, they, for whatever reason, they don't want to make money out of this. And they have a relatively small staff. So for them to police the content of every Wikipedia page in 73 different languages, you know, that is an impossible task. So it's up to us to a large extent, whatever language you prefer to use on Wikipedia, to be critical consumers. This particular case that ADL has highlighted, I think it's definitely, as I said, troubling, and hopefully Wikipedia will take action to correct this, as they have done in some other instances, you know. But I think the phenomenon of just having quote unquote biased information on Wikipedia, I really don't see how you can get away from it. I think it is up to us as critical consumers and up to watchdogs of different stripes to just keep an eye on and keep Wikipedia on their guard.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Wikipedia, and I think John Stossel did a video on sort of how it was created, and the founder, Jimmy Wales, has in the past described himself as objectivist and has definitely sort of libertarian leanings, which was the original sort of hope for Wikipedia, that sort of from the creative, basically leaving it completely free, leaving it completely without editorial controls, that basically from that chaos, the most sort of or hopefully the most objective sort of thing will come out on top, or something that, well, in reality it's something that most people can sort of agree on. And I think what we'll see here is when some people are really motivated, a certain group can take over what is sort of can basically outvote. So we'll talk about basically what this group has done, as well as sort of what maybe we can try to do to fix that. But I'll go to you, Marco. You guys, Marco and Richard, have been on an episode with me when we talked about the Arabic part. So yeah, Marco, what do you make of this study?
Yeah, to be honest, who cares? I mean, if in the 2020s you need Wikipedia article to tell you which side to take in the Hamas-Israel conflict, well, I've got news for you. You're either dumb as a box of hair or you're a wretched human being. As Anders said, information provided on Wikipedia, yeah, it's good as a starting point for further research, but you shouldn't rely on it as it's golden stuff, as it's the word given from the gods. It's a good starting point. Some of the stuff is very good, especially when it's scientific, because you cannot really have much bias when it's something specific and very scientific. But anything else, you should take it with a big pinch of salt. You have to be, it's your responsibility to be very critical of everything you encounter, to try integrating your knowledge and work out whether it makes sense or not. Ultimately, the issue comes from the fact that people nowadays are morally spineless. They are too afraid to take a position, too afraid to stand by what they know, and too easily swayed by somebody who's from the authority of a back of the sofa, basement jihadi typing on their keyboards, keyboard fighters kind of thing, will try and sway you and confuse you and give you the impression that what you know to be true is not true. And this always comes down to the fact that the way we use reason nowadays is being polluted and undermined by all sorts of things. It's not a surprise that the people who tend to be the keyboard fighters are lefties and therefore pro-Hamas side. It's the same kind of people we see in the media, same kind of people attracted by those kind of jobs, those jobs where you don't really need to be able to do anything in particular. You just have to, type things or spew your opinion, let your feeling guide your fingers and type words. Because all of the stuff is generally just either pure propaganda coming from a bad place, from the intentional deceiving and misrepresenting facts, or it just comes from a gut reaction, no thinking, no process involved. It's all about, I don't like this, therefore I'm gonna adjust the word according to my point of view.
I think we often talk about how politics is downstream of culture. And I think Wikipedia is downstream of culture, or at least a reflection of it. It's a reflection of the fact that honesty and integrity aren't valued attributes anymore. And the fact that things like accuracy and merit and truth are considered flabby terms that are manipulable by the person uttering them, or the context in which they're used. And that leads to this being the perfect forum for people to keyboard edit, for people to manipulate and control and reframe according to their agenda. I think if you think about what happened, exactly what Wikipedia is and what its precursors were before the internet, when you had like a set of bound encyclopedias on a shelf, and you would look up, different types of venomous snake or who invented the kettle or whatever, and you'd find that information in the same way accurately as you would find it in Wikipedia. The difference is that Wikipedia is also covering live changing news events. It's also covering a much more up-to-date representation of what's going on in the world, even on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis. The rapidity with which an entry is updated on the death of someone, or a new event happening in a given country is quite remarkable sometimes. But nevertheless, so it's being asked to do something that is really quite different from its predecessor, and yet we're treating the entire thing as like the bound versions of its predecessor on the shelf. And I think that that is something that we need to be wary of. I mean, I think that the problem is in today's society, sadly, it is a game of sort of one-upmanship, dog eat dog, a sort of means justify the end, might makes right. And if it's keyboard might that is going to force through a message, then that's what people will tend to do. And I think that's a reflection of the times we live in and the fact that political pull and that sort of activist mentality that is more interested in crushing an opponent even more than persuading somebody of their view is more interested than crushing the opposition in most cases, and that is. It's a sad reflection of society, to be honest, but you know that we're faced with that every day, so we shouldn't treat Wikipedia any different to any other means of information which we receive. And of course, all of the aspects in which people receive information, whether in the classroom, in the university, through dramas, through TV news, through journalism, all of those are reflected in the same way. So they all need that high level of critical thinking that Anders is talking about, and the fact that you can't coast your brain into accepting passively whatever you're fed, but you need to ask the questions, to verify, to cross-reference, and to confirm.
Yeah, someone in the chat says, hopefully, fortunately, AI will soon replace Wikipedia. Yeah, I'm sure AI fed on BBC and the New York Times and Al Jazeera is going to give you great resources on what really is going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, so if I may interject there and just on a comment on that with AI, and you know it's garbage in, garbage out there as in every other search engine that you have. Unfortunately, I just before we started, I did a search about what are some criticisms of Wikipedia on the AI engine that I'm using, and I got a long list of criticisms. And when I looked at the sources were all from Wikipedia. So you know, it's
yeah,
you have to be as
Wikipedia.
critical with your AI searches as with anything else.
Yeah, but also Wikipedia has an entry on Wikipedia, and you can actually find controversies sort of
Right.
even there. No, someone also said about sort of referencing that they reference Wiki in an essay. Should they be shot? I mean, whenever you even do research on Wikipedia and you want to reference it, reference the thing they are referencing, or sort of like go to the primary source Wikipedia is making and look at that. And again, you know, Wikipedia, when everything is sort of created, they need to source their stuff. But a source from Al Jazeera and source from, you know, something you can trust is looking the same. It's just a sort of like a small, you know, number that you have to look at what it means. And we'll go into sort of how the sourcing also was abused. Just one quick thing to mention about the sort of like hour by hour on Wikipedia. I usually Wikipedia is trying to sort of take some steps in that regard. Whenever there is sort of like a live event, they always have like a big thing at the top, basically saying this is live event. This you pretty much don't even read this because it's like so wrong, probably. But usually it's pretty good to again check even for live sourcing, because usually they have sources to the thing they are going to. So even when it comes to live stuff, it's good for like a collective thing of sources. But let's go a little bit more to the actual study. So I think I'll read the actual executive summary by the IDL about this study in full. It's not that long. It says, ADL has identified extensive issues with anti-Semitic and anti-Israel bias on Wikipedia in multiple languages. These issues include a coordinated campaign to manipulate Wikipedia content related to Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and similar issues, in which a group of editors systematically evade Wikipedia's rules to shift balanced narratives towards skewed ones, spotlighting criticism of Israel and downplaying Palestinian terrorist violence and anti-Semitism, and two pro-Hamas perspectives informing Arabic language Wikipedia, content on Israel and Israeli-Palestinian conflict. ADL has found clear evidence that a group of at least 30 editors circumvent Wikipedia's policies in concert to introduce anti-Semitic narratives, anti-Israel bias, and misleading information. It's important to also remember that this pretty much ramped up after October 7. Basically, this was something that was happening even before, but after October 7, it really sort of started going strong. And we can go into some of the evidence, but let me jump to you, Anders, again. Have you read through some of the reports, some of the evidence, and yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I read through some of it, not all, and it's not surprising. I mean, I don't know why Wikipedia would be immune from this when we have it everywhere else in the media landscape. Now, you can criticize Wikipedia maybe and say that they should have been more on their guard here, and maybe they should focus on certain areas that they know are hotspots at the moment. So for the last year, for instance, maybe their internal resources should have been a little bit more focused on the Israel-Palestine issue. Would be interesting to know if we find similar biases in the Ukraine versus Russia situation, and what the Russian version of Wikipedia says versus the Ukrainian version says, and so on and so forth. So it's I think I suspect Wikipedia takes this seriously, because I mean it's a threat to their existence basically long term if they don't. So, but yeah, no, I think the one thing that you could argue, or one thing you could argue, is definitely that they should have been more on their guard maybe from the beginning. You know, when something like this happens, maybe they focus some or redirect their resources. Now, then you can obviously ask, what are the biases of their own internal staff, right? And maybe they're pro-Hamas too, I don't know. Yeah, that is something that I think I would have liked to see.
Someone in the chat says if you're just a regular person, it's hard to sort of edit, correct, protect it, wiki, and that is something that is good. It shouldn't be, you shouldn't be able to sort of do it easily. That's why Wikipedia tries to sort of have like have some systems of basically you need to edit sort of multiple things, and you need to sort of build up credibility, which is good. But again, in this instance, it was abused. And even, I mean, Anders, you mentioned sort of like the different languages, like the Russian language. And I recommend people putting in YouTube Wikipedia wars, because some of them are hilarious, the way people are sort of arguing. There is one sort of Wikipedia war that happened over the flag for the Confederation of the Rhine, because technically it didn't have a flag, but some people used it. And then some people used resources from Wikipedia to argue, no, but this flag has been used for a long time. And it's really hilarious stuff. And something similar happened, I think, in Croatia, where, again, a nation with small nation that has sort of very few people. One person was pretty much able to take over the Croatian Wikipedia, and he was like a World War II, basically like a revisionist, and he was like excusing like war crimes during World War II. So, that is something that needs to be care of. And that brings me to, I think, one of the biggest sort of maybe problems for Wikipedia when it comes to certain things. Like Marco mentioned, when it comes to something like science, something is either right or wrong. It's until we get to like a complete postmodern society where truth doesn't exist, it's really hard to argue against sort of like exact things. But when it comes to anything that requires philosophy, you are in complicated territory, because you can have a story where, I mean, we've covered it. Let's take something controversial, such as when Israel bombed the World Central Kitchen, basically aid convoy. That's, to properly understand it, you need a contextual understanding of the war. You need a philosophical understanding of basically what war requires and what it means, and all of that needs to be stacked up. And that is simply not something Wikipedia is providing for, and it cannot really. I mean, oftentimes, even when we cover the stories, such as we covered the BBC story when they used, for a source, they used something one woman has said about what the IDF has been doing, and that was published as a story. Now, again, the same thing could have been published on Wikipedia. Hey, this is the story here, and here is a source to BBC, but you need like actual context to even sort of put out any information. That's why, you know, it's more like the society needs to get better for Wikipedia to needs to get better, not the other way around. But yeah, Marco, what do you make? We'll go to some of the evidence, but what do you make of some of the content in the ADL study?
Yes, to be honest, I find it quite staggering that people expect Wikipedia to be the source of all knowledge and accurate knowledge, because the whole point of Wikipedia, it's an open editing platform. I think that the word they use is democratization of knowledge or information, something like that. That in itself, it makes it open to all sorts of intervention from bad actors. So much so that 30 people have been identified and 6 have been banned from editing altogether because they found that they were so biased and maliciously making changes just to push propaganda. And so also it's a private enterprise. So I don't really expect them to have to provide all sort of checks and balances and this kind of stuff. It's up to them if they want to do it. What worries me is when people like the BBC, for example, which we are all forced to fund in a way or the other, whether through direct taxation through the license or indirect taxation through the money that's funneled into it, or the other corporation that actually take money from the state, money from the taxpayers, which then pretend to be unbiased and ultimately, as we know, for the BBC, for example, are sort of propaganda spokespeople for all sorts of tragic outfits like Hamas and all this kind of stuff. So I don't expect Wikipedia to be fantastic. When I use it, again, I use it as a starting point for research, and then I widen up the scope, go into the source and all this kind of stuff. But then again, Wikipedia is just a tool, and the main tool in order to use Wikipedia is your brain. So all you need to do is trying to think, engage your brain when you read. That applies to everything else, not just Wikipedia, but in particular Wikipedia, where especially on non-scientific content, that chances are that the bias from the writer, even if it's not necessarily a conscious bias, kind of wave through whatever article you're going to read. And that's fairly natural on certain things. And other things like the Hamas conflict, for example, is a bit more sinister. What I find interesting is that Wikipedia has got like about 8 million articles in English, followed by 2 million articles in Spanish, which we expect because the language is very popular in the world, 2 million in French, which is fairly staggering because the French don't like to mix up with the English sphere. And the next one is 2 million articles in Russian. Now, I don't think that the Russians use Wikipedia in order to democratize information. As far as I'm concerned, Russia does everything to avoid that. But you got this kind of stuff. Then you have the as you mentioned earlier on, the Wikipedia in Arabic, which is effectively designed to bash everything which is not Islam.
Yeah, for my part, I think I wanted to stress the fact that because it's downstream of everything else, and because of the general framing that's in the world, things like attitudes towards colonialism, toward the general attitude towards woke, for example. I know Elon Musk has called it Wokepedia and criticized it from that point of view. And of course, that may be true to some extent, but of course, it's true to virtually every institution you can look at that is infiltrated by the current ideas as they have been expressed by people in recent times. I think it's this idea that you've got Wikipedia representing a claim of accuracy and neutrality on the one hand, and that is achieved by the majority view on the other hand. And of course, that those two don't overlap entirely. And this belief that the more people that think something, the more it must be true, is already an enormous trap that you can fall into. And that is a problem. But of course, that's reflected in the way in which the mode works. I think some of the analysis they've done on this, I mean, to be honest, you don't need to analyze statistically with graphs and everything to work out when there's bias in it, whether it's in the BBC, as we've covered reports on, or in Wikipedia, or on CNN, or whatever, or in the New York Times. It's quite clear to anyone with a thinking brain. However, to some people, it adds extra vigor if they've done some form of statistical analysis and compare the number of edits and the number of representations of a given word or a given phrasing or a slant in some way or another. So I suppose to that extent that it highlights the fact that it's going on anyway, it has some value. But I wouldn't take the statistical form of analysis as a sensible way of proving something on its own in any respect. You would have to see instances of it with your own eyes, using your own mind, and verifying it with your own integration into the rest of your knowledge. That would be it.
So I think we might have lost Marco and Richard. So I'll take it over from there. Some people in the chat.
We did not lose them. They came across. Oh, right now. Okay, just when Richard stopped. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, some people in the chat are talking about democratization of information and having problems with that concept. And in some ways, I think, I mean, yeah, the idea that sort of the truth comes out of what we agree upon is sort of, yeah, that's the problematic part. But I think the sort of the idea for Wikipedia was that sort of, even when it comes to something being popular or something being sort of democratically popular, even when you look at elections in Western countries, it's usually not that the popular thing is sort of the best thing, but the popular thing is the least offensive thing that the most people can agree on. I see that most in, I like to play video games, and you always see that the most popular games are very rarely sort of what I would call sort of like the best games. They're usually something that nobody can hate, or it's so appealing to the most that sort of comes out on top. And there is nothing necessarily problematic about that. Similarly to Wikipedia, when it's something that the most people can agree upon, I think there is something valuable there. But when it comes to anything controversial, you are already in like a very polarizing thing. Now, let me cover some of the sort of evidence or the things that ADL has brought up. So one of the things they've talked about is that the fact that many edits have been done, again, by few individuals and in a small time frame, basically meaning sort of somebody wanting to achieve something, just going through everything they can find and changing as much stuff as they can. Contrasting that with sort of, I think they contrasted with sort of professional editors or people who just, do it normally, and it's much more sparse, much more sort of even split between many different individuals. And yes, sort of like seeing differences between that. Of course, talking about the spike after October 7th, that they became much more active. After that, even when it comes to sort of the way Wikipedia works, oftentimes they vote to either, let's say, add new articles or merge articles or sort of separate them. And in those instances, these few individuals have all voted in the same way. And if you look at the sort of the articles, it's clear that they were sort of either voting to remove the sort of viewing or let's say, pro-Israeli articles, or trying to basically add or keep accusatory things against Israel. As well, something I think I found the most interesting is the fact that Al Jazeera was the top news source for these organizations or for these individuals. Meaning, yeah, that is sort of again sort of what I would call like abusing of source, is the fact that you can source many things, and when Al Jazeera is considered sort of a reputable newspaper, you can make a whole Wikipedia article just citing Al Jazeera. Now, if somebody notices that, they might call out, "Hey, we are just sourcing Al Jazeera throughout all of this. We need to sort of find something better." But that requires someone to actually point it out, and it requires something that, you know, when you have just these few dozen people who all agree with each other because they have a certain agenda to go after, you find yourself in again this exact spot. Now I want to go to Wikipedia response, but before that, let me just first Richard, because you were talking and you didn't get to finish.
Yeah, I think I might mention the word Hong Kong and China, and then the internet pulled the plug. So
We haven't heard that even, so they're
have you
pretty
not?
good.
Well, they're preemptive then, aren't they? But yeah, so I was just talking about how the ADL report compares, for example, between firstly the US-China relations and how often that's edited and the manner in which that's edited as a comparison to this particular subject we're talking about here, and also how individual pages, such as, you know, Hong Kong's relation to China, is covered and edited, and of course that any of those highly contentious pages where you're going to have bad actors like communists, for example, in the case of the Chinese, trying to reframe the truth and revise the past, then you're going to have particularly troublesome outcomes in terms of accuracy. So I mean, anybody going to Wikipedia on its own to find out what relations between Hong Kong and China are in recent years really wants their head testing, because obviously you're not going to find an accurate representation of that. So that was just the point I was making to myself as I had to.
Yeah, and just to sort of compare it, I just went to sort of the Taiwan Wikipedia page. At the top, it says Taiwan, officially the Republic of China, is a country in East Asia. Now, sort of comparing it to the way these basically pro-Hamas have taken over Wikipedia. Imagine if the same sort of pro-Chinese people took over Wikipedia. It would probably say Chinese Taipei, officially a part of China, soon to be reunited with mainland China, or anything in those regards. You would be able to call out, "Hey, this is something weird is going on here." But of course, Wikipedia is able to protect against that in some instances, so it should be able, or I think it can take steps to sort of secure that in also other instances. Anders, anything to add before we go to Wikipedia response?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, and that is the fact that, you know, Wikipedia and the Wikimedia Foundation, it's a so-called not-for-profit organization, right? And somehow that is, I think, mistakenly giving them an aura of objectivity in many people's minds. You know, that just because there is no profit motive, then yes, they're neutral, they're unbiased, and so on and so forth. We've obviously seen that over the years that is not the case, because the same individuals, just before you start working for or editing, in this case, for a not-for-profit, it, you know, doesn't change anything really. So I think it would be interesting to see if Jimmy Wales eventually will start to rethink that position. And because I think there is a lot of, you could probably monetize Wikipedia and make a lot of money, but number one, it would also allow you to staff up and maybe do some more policing of these independent editors, because they're clearly understaffed to take on to police what they have today. And maybe they have grown too big. Maybe they should pare back, and focus on some of the essentials parts and cut out certain things. I don't know, but I think if you would start to monetize this, those are the discussions that would definitely surface, and you'll see where people are interested in putting in buying ads, for instance, or whatever the monetization formula may be. So going forward, that is something that I'm kind of curious to see what happens.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be even a new thing. Something to remember is that Jimmy Wales also has fandom, which is a Wikipedia style thing, but for mostly for gaming and I think also like movies and series, and that is privately held. That is sort of a for-profit company that I believe had some controversy in the last few years. I think it was specifically with using AI to sort of edit things. So, whoever said AI would be good, that was a very problematic thing because, again, AI can just, if you think Wikipedia might sometimes make stuff up or people there, AI can literally hallucinate information. So that's why I don't think it's a good idea to almost ever have AI sort of edit any of these things. But yeah, when it comes to, I mean, usually when people talk about for profit, the idea is that you want to avoid sort of the conflict of interest. Now, Wikipedia is probably one of the biggest ad spaces there is right now when it comes to how many visitors it gets. And right now, that ad space is pretty much empty. At least I haven't seen any to sort of preserve that. Now, if that was, I mean, already, Wikipedia is asking for support of the people, basically people who like it that should support it. If it became for profit, maybe somebody needs to create something separate. But Wikipedia already has the big advantage of already being there, already having the infrastructure and the editors already in place. But yeah, that we'll see where that goes. Marco, anything to say before we move on?
No, apart that I don't particularly like this kind of democratic, group thinking, average of the mob thinking and ideas that they're presenting this kind of open models. I don't really like it. If anything else, because I'm very well aware that the activists, the people. For example, the people working at Google, they tend to be very lefty. All the people involved in this kind of activities tend to have a very progressive view of the world, and they transfer it to the work. They turn out to be activists, and actually, in the end, they ruined everything they touch. But at the same time, if Wikipedia gets taken over by this kind of people who turn the information unreliable, well, it's going to harm Wikipedia itself. So the problem of garbage in, garbage out is still there. If you have too many people putting too much crap on Wikipedia, well, in the end, people will stop using it. Even people, plagiarizing stuff, which seems to be the main activity nowadays. Like the Chancellor of the Exchequer in Britain, but all these kind of people will have to start thinking about by themselves or trying to open a book or do something else.
And I think both Ayn Rand and Dr. Leonard Peikoff in their writings commented on the fact that this isn't a new problem. They were writing before the internet about dictionaries and the definitions within dictionaries, and how older dictionaries often had the more accurate definitions in them because they hadn't been polluted by Marxist linguists who were essentially using the dictionary as a form of promoting their ideas by manipulating the use of the concept and adjusting its meaning. I think the fact that the editors work on a volunteer basis, as you point out, that sometimes gives it an aura of neutrality, but it also gives it a sense that they can't spend a lot of time on it. And yet one of the things this ADL report points out is that some of these editors, these volunteer editors, are virtually full-time. You can see from their activity, their logs of their activity on it. Now, that can be for various different reasons, but it can be, and it's not difficult to imagine that it could be, because there is so much charity and aid and so much exploitation of the taxpayer in all sorts of forums, which ends up funneling money into organizations that then do have the staff to act as permanent paid activists to edit on Wikipedia. So although technically editors on Wikipedia aren't paid, they could well be paid by those keen to manipulate the message that is put on there. I think that's something we ought to be aware of.
And also the assumption that one contributor is just one person is fallacious as well, because as Richard pointed out, a charity or a group of pro-Hamas people can have one single login and then in turn spend 24 hours just editing stuff. So,
and one of the sorry,
no, go on.
I was just going to say, one of the interesting things this ADL report also brought out was that it seemed to imply that a lot of collaboration behind the scenes between editors, they're supposed to sort of be independent entities operating in isolation from one another, not communicating, regularly and interactively in order to constantly adjust things. And one of the things they point out is the speed to which the same editors react to other edits made by their collective of friends who, in order to ensure that it's pushed through as fast as possible and has already got so many confirmed approvals from other editors that it's down the track, and it therefore exists on Wikipedia ahead of people pointing it out or rectifying it. So that's one of the other things.
Yeah, and sort of talking about sort of conditioning people to think in a certain way, or sort of undermining. I just remember the joke and I need to tell it, otherwise I cannot move on. Basically, I remember a scene from I think it was Yes Prime Minister when they talked about the new I think some of the nuclear missiles, and basically talking about the education system in Britain, and the fact that one of the questions in the test was something like, if a nuclear arsenal in UK takes 5 billion to contain, and feeding a starving child in Africa takes 50 pounds, how many starving children could you feed by moving to conventional weapons, which I found pretty funny. It's a good show. But yeah, going into the response from Wikimedia Foundation, who were asked about this report, they've said, the values of Wikipedia and the Wikimedia Foundation reflect our commitment to integrity and accuracy, and we categorically condemn anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. Though our preliminary review of this report finds troubling and flawed conclusions that are not supported by the Anti-Defamation League's data, we are currently undertaking a more thorough and detailed analysis. Also, apparently, at least the spokesperson for Wikimedia said that ADL did not try to contact Wikipedia or Wikimedia before this, which I also find a bit sort of unfortunate, because that is something that should be commented on. Yeah, just to continue, basically, Wikipedia has taken in the past sort of steps towards some suspicious editors. They've said banning them and sort of trying to work with that. So it does really seem like, I think, Wikimedia is trying to solve this issue. Again, it's not something that is benefiting them in the long run. I really don't think they have sort of like a wanting to sort of give a certain narrative, not to mention it really hurts the credibility of Wikipedia. And once you allow it for one thing, it might, once people figure out how to do it, they might use it for any other things. So yeah, Anders, what do you make of their response, and do you think the steps will be taken to sort of really try to fight this? And what do you think the steps might be or should be?
Well, I assume they will take some steps to correct whatever they think is misrepresenting the situation, because again, it's a threat to their existence. I mean, if they are not a source of information that people can rely upon, even as a starting point, pretty much, then yeah, people will migrate away. They will start to see the contributions to the Wikimedia Foundation go down, and you know, that they're out there constantly, at least when I look at it, and they're asked for money to contribute. And there was a time when I actually contributed to Wikipedia because I found it having a lot of value. I have stopped contributing for the reasons that we're discussing here today. Yeah, they have to take it seriously because, yeah, it's clearly a threat, you know, in the long run. Absolutely. Because they will become marginalized eventually if they don't. And so overall, I think, I mean, it's a healthy sign here that we have watchdogs like ADL and others who are keeping an eye on Wikipedia. That's how it should work in the marketplace of ideas, in the marketplace of media. You know, that there is no, it will always be a back and forth between different opinions. And yes, in certain areas, we'll eventually, you know, we can determine what is the truth, but there are many areas and many edge cases where there will always be discussion. And I think this kind of the checks and balances that the marketplace is providing is the only way of making sure that long term that it hopefully will improve compared to where we are today. And again, it's a reflection of our culture, obviously. That is why maybe the quality has gone down over the last few decades, but I don't see that there is another way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of Wikipedia sort of providing the truth, I think that is already pretty much impossible, again, unless you have the objectivist philosophy. That's the truth, right? And unless you have that framework to go through the information about especially something like October 7th.
And yes, that would certainly help. But remember, objectivists are not in agreement about everything either. So, you know, there will always be that back and forth and give and take.
Yeah, but even then, when it comes to sort of, I think the goal of Wikipedia should be to at least provide something that's not not straight up propaganda for something. I can imagine that basically, especially when objectivism is not something that is popular or that is sort of mainstream, you'll never find sort of like our episode on Wikipedia as like this is the primary source for this, but you can at least find something better and providing more context, or at the very least, you know, saying that there is a discussion on this, and basically saying that, well, some people say this and some people say that, and that's the sort of the best thing we can. Although even this, some people say this and some people say this, cannot go to the extremes, such as the thing I quoted in the last episode we did on Wikipedia when it came to the Arabic parts, was the article from the what is it, the elders of Zion, whatever that sort of thing is, and how on the Arabic Wikipedia it said, well, some people say that this is a real document and some people say this is like a fabricated thing. No, it is a fabricate. There is no discussion there, and there shouldn't be any sort of discussion when, you know, the evidence is overwhelmingly on one side. Marco?
Objectivism would help you to work out what's happening. Not because objectivism is magic, but because objectivism is a philosophy that tells you there is a world out there, and your mind is capable of grasping it, understanding it, and working out what's true and what's wrong. So, you know, it's not a big leap. It's all about focusing on reality out there. And the problem is not really. I don't really care what Wikipedia is going to put in place in order to rectify the situation, because in the end, it's about its own existence. So if they want to survive, they will have to make sure that these issues are not, you know, the thing that starts the demise and they stop people from using it because of this bias. The problem here is that people tend to be total second-handers. People tend to outsource the thinking to a website out there because, as I mentioned earlier on, taking a moral stand in this day and age is seen as something impossible because you always have this uncertainty, this fear of making a decision, and all this kind of mind numbing stuff that comes from the current philosophy, the current culture. If you don't start thinking with your head, don't start realizing that your head is your brain, is your mind, is the only thing that can allow you to understand what's going on out there. If you don't engage your thinking, well, it's your responsibility to work out what's true, what's wrong, based on the observation of reality. And ultimately, it's not something that anyone else can do for you. But on the other hand, if you rely on somebody else's pre-digested thinking in order to take your actions, well, you're doomed to failure.
I think that response from Wikipedia could have been written by ChatGPT, having been put through a Yes Prime Minister filter and giving it how to cover a cock-up. Filter through it, because quite honestly, the dissing of the report, the dissing of the way it's presented, stating the complete opposite is true, claiming that we're definitely against anti-Semitism. I mean, that's just textbook stuff that people do on automatic without the evidence to back it up. But of course, they claim that the report isn't producing evidence, and yet it clearly is. So if you give a generic reply to that and you don't say what you think is flawed about it, then just saying, oh, it's flawed is very dismissive, isn't it? So I hope they are, behind the scenes at least, going to look more thoroughly at some of this, because some of it includes some very specific stuff. It includes specific mentions of pages where it's clear that certain terrorists have had their murder convictions removed from their reference on the Wikipedia page, when clearly that's a fact that's clearly verifiable and should be relevant on there. There's been lots of removal of entire citations a lot of the time to make sure that people aren't being able to see the primary sources that are offer the balance to those Hamas favoring ones. And of course, there's the intimidation of other editors, which it also points out how other editors, in the sort of chat section, the sort of reporting on the bit you don't read unless you're into editing Wikipedia, where you see the references to other editors within the discussion group behind the scenes. You can see people calling people out as Zionists or bullshitters or all that kind of stuff, and trying to intimidate them into changing certain elements of the edit they made in the first place. And then there's the actual removal and inclusion of given articles on Wikipedia. And the report does quite a good piece on taking some examples of what these groups of editors chose to keep in and what they chose to remove, or at least advise should be removed. And those make for interesting reading. I mean, there's a whole list of them. It's worth looking at the report, and I'm sure Daniel will attach it to this so you can read through it for yourselves. But just to give you a feel for it, some of the articles they chose to make sure that this group of editors, this group of 30, were intent on keeping, included titles such as Zionism, Race and Genetics as a subject on a page on Wikipedia, or Children in Israeli-Palestine Conflict as a subject. And some of the stuff they chose to pull out were things like Free Palestine, meaning the phrase. So you could analyze the way in which the phrase Free Palestine is used and what its full claims are. Again, on both sides, you could argue that what those claims are, but that your whole page being removed or hidden or merged so that it would be less easily found. Removing things like Hamas beheading incidents, or removing things like the 2023 Nablus attack, for example, on Israeli soldiers. Those kind of things being this diminishing of terrorist attacks against Israel, and this elevating this what they called foregrounding of criticism of Israel as being what's prominent within every article. So the first flavor you'll get is a criticism of Israel, and then everything is seen within that light, with some exceptions to it occasionally when forced to, or when those edits have not been manipulated.
We have a super chat from Kathleen. Thank you so much. She says, have you or will you guys cover the Online Safety Act? So apparently there was an act passed by the UK Parliament in 2023 designed to protect children and adults online and gives the relevant Secretary of State the power, subject to parliamentary approval, to designate it as and suppress or record wide range of online content that is illegal or deemed harmful to children. Harmful is in quotation marks. That is from Wikipedia. Talking about that. So I don't know how much you can trust it. I didn't go to source. Any sort of we might cover it. I'm not sure. Any sort of these acts are. I mean, Marco, have you heard about that? Do you know much about what it's supposed to do?
To be honest, I don't know the detail of it, but lately, especially with the new government, the freedom of speech has been under serious attack, if anything else, because they kind of promise support to the Muslim population in order to get votes. So they're doing at the moment, the government, the British government is doing somersaults in order to try and appease all sorts of stuff going on, and the result is harming the freedom of speech. Nothing really major has gone through yet, but the direction of travel is not positive.
And things like this Online Safety Act are characterized by what is typical of UK law when in this kind of area, in that it's very broad, very vague, very open to interpretation. And the whole idea is that essentially that the individual oppresses himself in fear of what the law might be, should he fall foul of it down the line or be picked out by it. So a lot of it is definitely focused on that sense of fear as driving what people do, and the fact that nobody can understand what the law actually entails, what it permits and what it doesn't, and therefore it's emblematic of our times, sadly, and one of the things that Rand warned about. This desire that laws should be vague and unidentifiable, and that everybody should be afraid of them, and of course should fall foul of them regularly, and then consider themselves to be lawbreakers, like every other lawbreaker, and we're all the same. We're all lawbreakers. That's a terrible way of thinking when you've got these horrible vague laws. It should be clear. You should know in advance what the law says and what it doesn't, so that you can act accordingly.
Yeah, and that is a much bigger threat than even 100 of editors misrepresenting whatever cause it is on Wikipedia.
Now, to sort of finish, because Richard mentioned, yes, Prime Minister again, so I have to mention one more thing. Basically, there was and I really recommend watching this because it's a really good sort of satire, and applies to, I think, all governments, not just the UK. Basically, there was one scene where the Prime Minister he just was in front of the Parliament, and apparently he said that he made a statement that he said was the only statement that was clear, simple, straightforward, and true. To which Humphrey responded, "Yes, unfortunately, although the answer was indeed clear, simple, and straightforward, there is some difficulty in justifiably assigning to it the fourth of the epithets you applied to the statement, inasmuch as the precise correlation between the information you communicated and the facts insofar as they can be determined and demonstrated is such as the cause of epistemological problems of sufficient magnitude as to lay upon the logical and semantic resources of the English language and heavier burden that they can reasonably be expected to bear," which the Prime Minister was confused, and then Humphrey had to explain, "You lied," which was the meaning of that statement. And that sort of reminded me the way sort of you usually hear when it comes to politicians sort of apologizing for someone while not really.
And another line he uses, "I don't want something that's true. I want something I can tell Parliament," which also makes the same point, but yes.
With that, Anders, where can people find you, and any last thoughts?
No last thoughts. I'm on Substack, andersingemarsson.substack.com, or at Think Right or Wrong.
Marco?
Yeah, just bear in mind, this kind of activists, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian people will weaponize every single resources out there. They weaponize aid, they weaponize the media, they weaponize all sorts of stuff. So be careful when you analyze the stuff, and also bear in mind that, again, the burden of working out what's true, what's not true is on you. It's not on somebody else's article.
Yeah, thinking is an active process, so don't stick your brain in cruise mode. Just keep it switched on and pay attention to what you're reading and absorbing. If you want to find more of the stuff we do, check out the shorter form material, which is available on the Briefly Objective. The link is in the description below for lots of clips taken from these shows with added visuals for emphasis.
And with that, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective. Thank you again, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.